I never thought dating her would turn her family into my enemies. They tried to ruin my business, my reputation, and my relationship. I survived it all, but the truth about what happened still keeps me up at night. I'll never forget the night my girlfriend's sister decided I wasn't good enough for her family, before I'd even opened my mouth. From the moment Gwen saw me, she treated me like something she'd stepped in. I'd been dating Veronica for 3 months, and she insisted I meet her older sister at this trendy downtown spot. I was nervous because if Gwen didn't approve, Veronica made it clear there'd be no wedding in our future. On the way there, Veronica gave me a heads up. Gwen's been impossible since my ex, she warned. He flaunted fake wealth, then stole $50,000 from me. Now she assumes every guy is running the same scam. What neither of them knew. I wasn't some broke chancer. I owned the restaurant we were about to eat in fact I owned all 10 locations. But I'd learned long ago that the second people smell money they change. So I kept that little detail to myself, showed up in jeans and stayed quiet. Gwen strolled in 20 minutes late, scanned me from head to toe, and I could see it in her eyes, verdict already delivered. She shook my hand, then immediately wiped hers on her dress like I'd contaminated her. The hostess led us to our table. Gwen sat beside me for all of 3 seconds before sniffing dramatically and switching seats across from us. James, my waiter of 3 years, greeted me with a polite "Good evening, sir," before catching himself and playing it off. But Gwen? She pounced. They probably know all their regular delivery boys, she said, smirking down at her menu like she'd just cracked a case wide open. Her husband arrived late from surgery, all smiles, and asked me what I did for work. I opened my mouth, but Gwen jumped in. He works in food service, she said, waving her hand like she was shooing away a fly. The tone in her voice could have made a busboy sound like a CEO in comparison. Then she started taking pictures of the table, carefully angling every single shot so I wasn't in them. We're documenting for grandfather's memorial, she announced. Then to Veronica she added, we're keeping it intimate, family and accomplished friends only. When the waiter came back for orders I was ready to speak. Gwen beat me again. He'll have the chicken plain. Restaurant workers have simple palates. Too much flavor confuses them, she said, dripping with fake concern. Veronica's face burned red, but she stayed silent. The wine came next. I reached for the bottle to pour for everyone, Gwen's hand shot out and snatched it. She poured for herself, her husband and Veronica, then set the bottle down, leaving my glass empty. Don't worry, she said sweetly. You're probably used to water. Throughout the meal she studied me like I was a lab rat. Do you always hold your fork like that? She asked. Like you're scared of it? Her husband tried to talk sports. She wasn't done. Your mother must be so proud, she cooed. Her son serving other people's children food while they build legacies. She reached over and straightened my collar, like I was a 5-year-old. Let me guess, single mom? Or worse, 2 moms. That would explain the lack of masculine ambition. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Veronica squeezed my hand under the table. But Gwen kept going. Out came her phone again, this time showing Veronica old pictures. Remember David? Harvard MBA, just made partner. He asked about you last week. Swipe. Look at you with Christopher in Tuscany, and James' yacht proposal. You looked alive then, not resigned. She grabbed Veronica's hand. You're dating down because Marcus hurt you. But this is just self-punishment. That's when it happened. An elderly couple from table 12 walked over, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. They've been coming here since the first week I opened. Mrs. Thompson smiled warmly. We just wanted to thank you for covering our anniversary dinner last month, she said. It's why we love all your restaurants. You never forget your first customers. Gwen's face went white. Your restaurants? She whispered as the water glass shook in her hand and tipped over. I was just trying to protect, she turned to Veronica. You said he worked in food service. I do, I told her, calm and steady. I serve food at 10 locations across the country. She actually begged me not to ban her from dining at any of them. The same woman who wouldn't let me pour wine was now practically on her knees. And sure, I could have let it go. But insulting me is one thing. Insulting my mom? That's going to cost her. The water spread across the white tablecloth like a slow, creeping stain of humiliation, and Gwen's face mirrored it perfectly. She snatched up napkins, blotting frantically, her eyes darting between me and the Thompsons, who were still standing there, warm smiles completely oblivious to the tension hanging over our table. I think there's been some sort of misunderstanding, Gwen stammered, her voice going a full octave higher. She turned toward the elderly couple with a smile so forced it looked painful. He must have meant visiting the restaurants, not owning them. Mrs. Thompson tilted her head, adjusting her glasses like she needed to double-check what she was hearing. Oh no, dear. He owns them. We were at the ribbon cutting for the very first one 8 years ago. Such a beautiful day. Mr. Thompson beamed, giving my shoulder a friendly pat. Built the whole thing from the ground up. Started with that little corner cafe on 5th. And look at him now. Gwen's husband, the surgeon, cleared his throat, shifting like the seat had suddenly gotten uncomfortable. 10 locations, he repeated slowly, testing the words. That's quite an achievement. The look Gwen gave him could have soured cream. She tossed the sodden napkins onto the table, sitting up straighter as if good posture could erase the embarrassment. Her cheeks were still the shade of marinara sauce. Well, she said finally, her voice sharp and brittle, you certainly kept that quiet. She let out a laugh that landed somewhere between a hiccup and a choke. Playing games with people, were you? Before I could respond, Veronica's voice cut in, steady, firm. He wasn't playing games. You just never gave him a chance to speak. Her hand was still wrapped around mine under the table, but now it felt protective, almost fierce. The Thompsons seemed to pick up on the tension. They made their polite goodbyes, though not before Mrs. Thompson gave me a pointed look and murmured something about people showing their true colors. And just like that, Gwen shifted gears. Her humiliation started morphing into something else, something sharper. She leaned in, her nails tapping against the table like a ticking clock. This is actually perfect, she said, her eyes lighting up in a way that made my stomach turn. Veronica, do you realize what this means? Your boyfriend owns a restaurant chain. Before Veronica could respond, Gwen snatched her sister's hand. We could have the memorial dinner here. Actually, better. We'll have all 10 locations cater different parts of the event. Gwen, stop, Veronica said flatly. But Gwen was already pulling out her phone, thumbs flying across the screen. I'm telling the family group chat right now. My sister's boyfriend, the restaurant mogul. Everyone will be thrilled. She looked up at me, smiling with her mouth but not her eyes. You'll give us a family discount, of course. Or better yet, comp it. It's for grandfather. Her husband tried to gently interject. Maybe we should. But Gwen brushed him off like lint on her sleeve. Imagine the Instagram posts. Exclusive family event at all 10 locations. Do any have rooftops? Sunset shots would be incredible. I just sat there watching her, part disgusted, part fascinated. 5 minutes ago I wasn't fit to pour her wine. Now I was apparently her personal event planner. The memorial's next month, right? She pressed on, not waiting for answers. I'll need to tour each location, make sure they meet our standards. I mean, these are real restaurants, not just diners, yes? James returned with a pitcher of water, discreetly cleaning up the rest of the mess. He glanced at me, silently asking if I needed him to intervene. I shook my head. Not yet. Oh, and bring us your Real wine list, Gwen snapped without looking at him. We'll need to taste everything for the memorial. Can't serve subpar bottles to grandfather's guests. Veronica's voice was tight, on the edge of snapping. Gwen, you're being helpful, Gwen interrupted. Yes, I know. Someone has to take charge. Out came a little leather notebook from her purse. She was already scribbling notes. We'll need 3 locations for the main event, the rest can handle overflow. You've got vendor contacts, right? Florists, photographers, live music? Only the best. She tapped her pen against her lips, then smirked. And you'll give a speech, of course. As our family's newest entrepreneur. She practically spat the word. I stayed silent, letting her tangle herself in her own arrogance. Beside me, Veronica's breathing was faster now, her grip on my hand trembling, not with embarrassment, but with pure anger. Stop, Veronica said again, louder this time. Gwen waved her off. Don't be ridiculous. This is a perfect chance for him to give back to the family. Isn't that right? She locked eyes with me, daring me to contradict her. After all, family helps family. I looked her dead in the eye. We're not family. The words dropped like a stone in water. Her pen froze. Her husband stopped mutilating his steak and glanced up. Not yet, Gwen replied slowly, her tone suddenly colder. But when you marry my sister, and you are planning to marry her, aren't you? We'll be one big happy family. She leaned back, lips curling into a challenge. Unless you're one of those men who strings women along. 3 months is a long time to be just dating at your age. Gwen. Veronica's voice cracked like a whip across the table. What? I'm looking out for you, Gwen replied, her tone dripping with fake concern. Men with money, they often have commitment issues. They think they can trade up. She turned to me, adding with a smirk, no offense. Her husband finally stepped in. Gwen, I think we should go. She spun toward him like he'd just insulted her. Go? We just discovered my sister is dating someone actually successful and you want to leave. Her laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Unless you're embarrassed that a restaurant owner is doing better than a surgeon. I swear, the color drained right out of the man's face. Around us, other diners had started sneaking glances at our table. James, my waiter, was hovering nearby, clearly ready to jump in if things got ugly. Maybe Gwen realized she'd pushed it too far, because she straightened her posture, smoothed her hair, and put on a smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm sorry, she said, voice falsely sweet. This has been surprising. Let's start over properly. She extended her hand to me, the very same hand she'd wiped on her dress after our first handshake. Gwen Hamilton, she announced, soon to be your sister-in-law apparently. I looked at her hand and left it hanging in the air. The silence between us stretched uncomfortably until she slowly pulled it back, her smile cracking. I see. You're going to be difficult about this. Difficult? Veronica's voice was climbing now. You humiliated him all night. I was protecting you, Gwen shot back. How was I supposed to know he was? She waved her hand at me. This? Because you could have asked, Veronica snapped. The sisters stared each other down like it was a showdown at high noon. Gwen's husband quietly pushed his massacred steak away and signaled James for the check. We're leaving, he said, calm but firm. Gwen's head whipped toward him. We haven't even talked about the memorial arrangements. We're leaving, he repeated, already pulling out his wallet. I raised a hand to James before he could bring the bill. It's on the house. Gwen's eyes lit up instantly. See? He's already being generous with family. No, I corrected, voice steady. I'm being polite to paying customers once. That landed. Her mouth opened and closed like she was catching flies before she finally managed. Are you threatening to ban us? Her husband stood, pulling her chair back. Gwen. Now. She rose, yanking her purse and phone from the table with sharp, angry movements. This is ridiculous. I made a simple mistake. You made dozens of them, Veronica said quietly. Gwen's face twisted through a whole slideshow of emotions before settling on pure indignation. Fine. But when this relationship falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to me. She stormed toward the door, her husband following behind, but not before shooting me a look that screamed I'm sorry. The door closed, and the whole restaurant seemed to exhale at once. The clinking of silverware, the low hum of conversation, all of it slowly crept back in. I'm so sorry, Veronica whispered, eyes brimming. I squeezed her hand. You don't have to apologize for her. She wasn't always like this, Veronica murmured. Marcus really messed her up. She used to trust people. I could have told her Gwen's behavior went way past protective older sister, but she was hurting enough already. James came by to clear the plates. Will there be anything else this evening? Veronica shook her head. I said, just the check for our meals. As James walked away, Veronica turned back to me. You really own all of this? All 10 locations? Yeah. Why didn't you tell me? I shrugged. It's never mattered before. I wanted you to know me, not my bank account. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Gwen's going to make this complicated. That was an understatement. I could already see it, the way her eyes flickered as she left. Gwen wasn't done. Not even close. We'll handle it, I told Veronica, trying to sound more confident than I actually felt. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it and her shoulders dropped. Family group chat, she groaned, sliding the phone over for me to see. Just had dinner with Veronica's boyfriend. Lots to discuss. Family meeting tomorrow at Mom's house. Mandatory. Below it, the replies were already rolling in, question marks, exclamation points, demands for details. Veronica flipped the phone face down like she couldn't bear to see more. I don't have to go, she said, but the hesitation in her voice told me otherwise. Yeah, you do, I said. And we both know it. She sighed, sinking into her chair. She's going to make my life miserable until she gets what she wants. I thought about the way Gwen had sneered at the mention of my mom, like she was beneath her. My jaw tightened again. Maybe, I said slowly. Or maybe she's about to learn that some people can't be pushed around. Veronica's eyes searched mine, a mix of hope and fear. What are you thinking? I'm thinking your sister needs to understand boundaries. She doesn't do boundaries, Veronica said, almost laughing, but there was no humor in it. Then it's time she learned. James arrived with our check. I signed it quickly, but as we stood, Veronica caught my arm. Please don't ban her from your restaurants. She'll never forgive me. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the tension she carried when it came to Gwen. That constant, quiet fear of setting her sister off. I won't ban her, I said. But I'm not going to be her personal caterer either. Her face softened with relief. Thank you. I know she was awful tonight, beyond awful, but she's still my sister. And ever since Marcus, she trailed off, shaking her head. She's been so paranoid about anyone I date. We made our way toward the exit, passing tables full of laughter and clinking glasses. This was my world, my creation. And Gwen had tried to reduce it to nothing with a few cruel words. The thing about Marcus, I said, holding the door open for her, is that he was a con from the start. Flash, no substance. Veronica nodded. Everything about him was fake. The car, the watch, even his business cards. So Gwen's protecting you from the wrong thing. She's so focused on money being the problem she can't see past it. We stepped out into the cool night air. Veronica shivered, so I pulled her closer. She's going to come at you hard now, she warned. Once Gwen decides she wants something, she doesn't stop. Good thing, I said, I'm just as stubborn. She looked up at me, worry etched into her features. This isn't what you signed up for when we started dating. No, I admitted. But it's not what you signed up for either. You didn't know I owned restaurants. That's different. Is it? We both kept things back. The difference is, I was going to tell you soon. Was Gwen ever planning to treat me with respect? She didn't answer, which was all the answer I needed. Then my phone buzzed. A message from James, boss, heads up. The woman who just left was taking photos of employee schedules and delivery trucks in the back lot. I turned the screen toward Veronica. Her face went pale. She's already planning something, she whispered. I slipped the phone into my pocket. Gwen wasn't letting this go, that much was clear. The only real question now was how far she'd take it. And more importantly, how far I'd let her push before I pushed back. The drive home from the restaurant felt endless. Veronica sat with her face turned toward the window, her fingers tapping a jittery rhythm against her leg. I kept both hands on the wheel, still replaying James's text in my head. Gwen. Photographing employee schedules and delivery trucks. Not just nosy big sister behavior, that was deliberate. Purposeful. But for what? Veronica's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She checked it every so often, her expression tightening with each glance. The family group chat was on fire. When I pulled into her apartment complex, we just sat there. No radio. No small talk. Finally, she handed me her phone. The screen was a wall of messages. Her mom demanding to know what's going on. Cousins fishing for gossip about the restaurants. An aunt asking why she'd kept this a secret. And Gwen, sending a constant stream of memorial planning updates, each one more presumptuous than the last. I walked her to her door. She lingered there, looking at me like she wanted me to tell her everything would be fine. But I couldn't. Because we both knew this was just the opening move. She kissed me goodnight, but it wasn't the same. When I got home, I couldn't shake it. Gwen taking pictures of delivery trucks and schedules? That wasn't family drama anymore, that was the opening scene of some low-budget corporate espionage movie. Sleep didn't happen. Around 2 a.m. I grabbed my keys and headed to my flagship location. The night cleaning crew was wrapping up, so I jumped in to help stack chairs, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. At 6 a.m. my phone rang. James's voice was sharper than usual. "Boss, we just got a call. Someone claiming to be a health inspector. They asked very specific questions about our suppliers, our safety protocols, and you. They wanted to know your schedule. Which locations you visit most." I was there in 20 minutes. James had written everything down. The questions weren't random, they were targeted. I started making calls to my other locations. Same story at 3 of them, inspection inquiries that didn't feel right. Then, around 8 o'clock, Veronica texted. "Family meeting. 2 p.m. at her mom's." Apparently, Gwen had been busy rewriting history all night. Depending on who she was talking to, I'd either been cold and disrespectful at dinner, or I'd promised her the moon for the memorial. I spent the morning bouncing between restaurants, warning managers to be on alert. At my 4th location, I found something worse. The produce delivery was late. When I called the supplier, they told me someone, claiming to be from my restaurant, had called to cancel the order. It didn't stop there. At 2 other locations, suppliers reported the same thing. Then came fake 1-star reviews, all with eerily similar wording about terrible service and rude management. This wasn't random. This was organized. I started documenting everything, screenshots of reviews, supplier call logs, delivery cancellations. If this escalated, my lawyers were going to need a paper trail. But I wasn't thinking about lawyers just yet. I was thinking about Gwen. And the fact that she'd just taken this fight way past personal. By 1:30 p.m. I was pulling up to Veronica's place to take her to the family meeting. She looked drained. The dark circles under her eyes said everything about her night, hours spent fending off calls, messages, and whatever storm Gwen had been brewing in the group chat. On the drive, she gave me a crash course in family politics. Her mom, June, almost always sided with Gwen when things got ugly. Their dad had passed away 5 years ago, and since then Gwen had stepped into the family protector role, a role she'd clung to even tighter after the Marcus disaster. By the time we turned onto her mom's street, it was clear the neighborhood was the kind where news didn't just travel, it gossiped its way across lawns before you even shut your car door. The driveway was already packed, cars spilling onto the curb. Veronica squeezed my hand as we walked up the path. Before we could even knock, the door swung open. June. Shorter than both her daughters, but standing there with an authority that made her seem 10 feet tall. She greeted Veronica warmly, then turned to me with a curt nod, the kind that told you exactly how welcome you were. Inside, the living room was full. 15 sets of eyes turned toward us. And there was Gwen, dead center, perched on the arm of a leather chair like a queen holding court. Her husband was in the corner, wearing the look of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. The questions started immediately, rapid fire, from every direction. But Gwen wasn't just chiming in, she was conducting the entire interrogation like it was a symphony. She had notes, points she wanted to hit. She'd clearly prepared for this. Every time I answered something, she twisted it. When I said I started with one restaurant, she implied something shady about my initial investment. When I talked about growing the business slowly, she turned it into me hiding success from Veronica. The room got hotter with every exchange. Veronica tried to step in, but Gwen had the family's ear. She painted me as the secretive outsider who'd slipped into their lives under false pretenses. My decision to keep my ownership quiet? Suddenly, that was evidence I couldn't be trusted. Then came what Gwen clearly thought was her knockout punch. Printed screenshots. She passed them around like damning exhibits in a courtroom. Fake 1-star reviews, the same ones I'd seen online this morning, but here presented as if they were real customer complaints I'd been covering up. I could see the trap instantly. If I called them fake, I'd sound defensive, paranoid, even. If I ignored them, people would assume they were legit. So I did neither. I took out my phone and called James, putting it on speaker. "Hey James, can you check the reservation system for these dates? See if these names ever booked with us." One by one, he confirmed. No reservations. No credit card records. Nothing. The room went quiet. Gwen's face flushed, but she didn't miss a beat. Well, maybe they paid cash. Or used a different name. Always another angle. Always another way to twist it. That's when June stepped in, suggesting a break. People drifted toward the kitchen or the backyard, and the tension loosened, at least for the moment. Veronica pulled me into the hallway, apologizing over and over. I could see how torn she was, trapped between defending me and keeping peace with her family. While we were apart, I overheard Gwen in the kitchen, working her magic on a few ants. She was planting seeds, wondering aloud if I'd targeted Veronica because she was vulnerable after Marcus. It was subtle. Calculated. Dangerous. When everyone gathered again, something had shifted. The questions came sharper now, more personal. They wanted to know about my background, my family, why a man with my success would keep his wealth a secret. I kept calm, answering what I could, dodging what I couldn't, but Veronica was starting to wilt under the pressure. Her hand found mine again, holding tighter this time. Then Gwen overplayed her hand. She looked right at me and suggested that maybe, just maybe, I could prove my commitment to Veronica by helping with the memorial. Not just help, give them a deep discount. Or better yet, free catering for the whole family. Some people in the room actually nodded along. I declined, politely but firmly. I told them the memorial was a family matter, and while I respected their grandfather's memory, I wasn't going to let my business be used as leverage. The murmurs started immediately, some agreeing with me, others clearly offended. And Gwen? She pounced. She turned my refusal into proof that I valued money over family. She'd set a trap where there was no winning move, and she knew it. Either I gave in to Gwen's demands, setting the stage for a lifetime of manipulation, or I held my ground and played right into the villain role she'd been building for me since day one. Before I could decide, Veronica suddenly stood. The scrape of her chair cut through the room like a blade. "We're leaving," she said, voice trembling but firm. Her mother tried to stop her, urging her to stay and finish the conversation, but Veronica wasn't having it. She grabbed my hand and all but dragged me toward the door. The drive was quiet, except for Veronica's soft sniffles. I wanted to reach for her, but I could tell she needed space to breathe, to process the ambush her family had just staged. We ended up at a small park near her apartment. Sat on a bench by the water. That's where she let go, crying openly. She told me she felt ripped in two, still loving her family but hating the way they acted. She talked about how different things had been before Marcus, how Gwen used to be trusting. I held her, but in the back of my mind I was connecting dots. Gwen's fake reviews. The inspection calls. The way she'd rallied the family against me. Dinner had been the warm-up. The family meeting was round 2. And she wasn't planning to stop. Right on cue, my phone buzzed, messages from my managers. 2 more locations hit with suspicious calls. One even had someone show up pretending to be a fire inspector, fishing for details about ownership and management. The harassment was ramping up. Veronica saw the messages and fresh tears welled up. She kept apologizing for her sister. I told her it wasn't her fault, but Gwen knew exactly what she was doing. She was using Veronica's love for her family as a weapon. We sat there for hours, tossing around options. At one point, Veronica suggested we take a break until things cooled down. The way her voice cracked told me it wasn't what she wanted, it was what she thought might make things easier. But breaking up now? That would hand Gwen exactly what she wanted. It would validate every lie she'd told about me. Instead, I told Veronica we'd be strategic. Document everything. Every manipulation. Every interference. Every stunt. Build a pattern so even June couldn't ignore it forever. Veronica agreed, but not happily. She knew her sister. This was going to get uglier before it got better. By evening, I dropped her back at her apartment. We both knew the next few days were going to be a test. Gwen had made her move. Now it was our turn. Back at my office that night, I met with my managers. We tightened security. Changed supplier verification processes. Put a plan in place for handling these bogus calls and visits. If Gwen wanted a fight, she wasn't going to take down my business without resistance. Then the next morning, she escalated again. A local food blogger, someone I'd never heard of, suddenly published a hit piece on my restaurants. It was too perfectly timed, and the talking points were suspiciously close to Gwen's. The blogger claimed insider knowledge of poor management and encouraged people to try other establishments. The blog had been dead for months. Then, out of nowhere, it came alive just to drag my name. And the writing style? It felt familiar. The fallout was instant. My marketing team scrambled to control the damage, but the cancellations started rolling in. 3 corporate catering orders gone, all citing concerns about recent reviews. Veronica called, her voice breaking. She'd seen the post because Gwen shared it in the family group chat, complete with captions about protecting the family's reputation and disturbing patterns. It wasn't just about me anymore. Gwen was trying to isolate Veronica to pressure her into ending things. I told Veronica about the cancellations and she started crying again. She wanted to confront Gwen. I told her not to, that's exactly what Gwen wanted. Confront her and she'd flip the narrative, turn herself into the victim, and keep swinging from the shadows. If Gwen wanted to drag this into the business arena? Fine. I'd respond on my terms, not hers. I've been in this industry a long time. Built my reputation from the ground up. And if Gwen wanted to weaponize reputation? She was about to learn it cuts both ways. I started making calls to fellow owners I'd known since my first cramped little cafe. I kept the details light, but word travels fast in the restaurant world. Messages of support started rolling in. And with them, stories. Turns out I wasn't the first target of this kind of thing. One call in particular stood out. A colleague told me about a nearly identical smear campaign he'd faced years ago, fake reviews, phony inspection calls, even a food blogger suddenly springing back to life just to trash him. The kicker? He traced it all back to a so-called reputation management company, the kind that specializes in competitive strategies, which is a nice way of saying corporate hit jobs. So I dug. Hard. And what I found made my blood run cold. The IP addresses from some of my fake reviews? They matched the same block used by that company. The writing style? Consistent across the anonymous reviewers, the blogger, even some of the suspicious complaint emails. This wasn't Gwen firing off nasty Yelp posts from her couch. She'd hired professionals. That changed everything. This wasn't overprotective big sister territory anymore. This was calculated, paid for sabotage. I had my lawyers draft a cease and desist, not for Gwen but for the company she'd hired. I didn't need her excuses. I needed results. Within 48 hours, the harassment stopped. The blog post vanished. The fake reviews started disappearing. But the damage was already done. When I told Veronica, she didn't know whether to feel relieved or devastated. Gwen hadn't just tried to ruin me, she'd paid to do it. That was premeditated. Cold. Cruel. The family dynamic shifted after that. A few relatives started questioning Gwen more openly, especially when they saw the online smear campaign crumble overnight. But June? Still glued to her eldest daughter's side, refusing to believe Gwen could go too far. So Gwen pivoted. If she couldn't take down my business, she'd go after Veronica directly. The calls started. All hours of the day. Never from Gwen herself, always a cousin, an uncle, and aunt, each one just concerned about Veronica's relationship. The talking points? All the same. You could practically hear Gwen feeding them the script. Veronica was wearing down fast. She was exhausted. Her work performance slipped, her boss pulled her aside. The guilt was eating her alive and Gwen knew it. Family events became minefields. Gwen would spend them peppering Veronica with concerned questions or making side comments about relationships that just don't feel right. The memorial planning turned into her ultimate weapon. She'd schedule meetings when she knew Veronica couldn't be there, then accuse her of not caring. She'd make big decisions without her, then frame it as Veronica being uninvolved. I tried to support her without taking over, but watching her unravel was brutal. She was losing weight, barely sleeping, flinching every time her phone buzzed. Gwen was grinding her down by sheer persistence. And then, Gwen crossed the line. She announced she'd found the perfect venue for the memorial, a country club. But not just any country club. One hosting a singles mixer the same weekend. She'd already put down a deposit, using money from their grandfather's memorial fund. It was diabolical. If Veronica objected, she'd be accused of disrespecting their grandfather's memory. If she went, Gwen would have an open stage to parade eligible men in front of her all night. Every detail calculated for maximum damage. I found Veronica later that day, sitting in her car outside my restaurant crying. She'd just had another brutal family call but couldn't bring herself to come inside. She told me she felt like she was dragging chaos into my life, like maybe Gwen had been right about me all along. That's when something in me shifted. Enough was enough. Gwen had been chipping away at us for weeks, hurting Veronica, hitting my business, and pushing her poison through every channel she could. If she wanted to play dirty? Fine. She was about to find out. Restaurant owners know exactly how to deal with problem customers. The gloves were coming off. I knew I couldn't just charge in guns blazing. That's exactly what Gwen was counting on. A direct confrontation she could twist into proof that I was aggressive, controlling, maybe even dangerous. No. If she wanted to play chess, I'd match her move for move. Her weapon had always been manipulation, using family loyalty like a leash. Mine would be the same, except I'd replace manipulation with something far more dangerous to someone like Gwen, the truth. Her weakness was obvious once you saw it, her image. Everything she did was to maintain the picture of the perfect big sister, the self-appointed family protector ever since Marcus hurt Veronica. So I started digging. Her social media? A carefully staged shrine to herself, family devotion posts, curated shots of successful events, all perfectly lit and captioned. But beneath the filters, cracks started showing. Former friends posting cryptic complaints. Ex-colleagues who didn't have a single nice thing to say. Business relationships that had ended abruptly, always with the same whispers about her need for control. Then I started reaching out. Old classmates. People she'd worked with. Even acquaintances from years back. And the stories? They didn't just confirm what I suspected, they showed a pattern stretching back long before Marcus. Gwen's protective streak wasn't about love. It was about control. About making herself the gatekeeper to other people's lives. I didn't dump all this on Veronica, not yet. She was already carrying enough weight. Instead, I worked quietly, building a counter-narrative. Where Gwen planted doubt, I'd plant truth. Where she twisted reality, I'd give people facts they couldn't ignore. And the perfect stage for all of it? The memorial. Gwen had made it her centerpiece, her proof of loyalty to the family. So I'd make it the scene of her own undoing. Not by calling her out in public, but by letting her choices speak for themselves. I started contacting her grandfather's actual friends, the ones Gwen had conveniently left off her country club guest list. These were the people who'd known him for decades, who remembered him for who he was, a simple, no-nonsense man who hated pretension. When they heard about the memorial venue, they were stunned. The man they'd loved would have hated it. And Gwen? She'd never asked them a thing. I didn't have to tell them what to do. I just suggested they talk to June, share their thoughts. And they did. The calls began, polite at first, then firmer as more friends learned about Gwen's plans. June found herself trapped between her daughter's glossy, overpriced arrangements and the mounting voices of people who actually knew her father's wishes. Gwen tried to spin it, modernizing the memorial for younger family members. But it fell flat. Too many people knew the truth. Several even remembered him saying, in his own words, that he wanted something simple, not expensive. The family group chat turned into a war zone. Gwen on one side, defending her choices with increasingly flimsy justifications. Other relatives asking pointed questions about the memorial fund. Why the venue? Why the deposit? Why were so many friends excluded? And for the first time, Veronica was seeing it. Seeing that her sister's protection wasn't protection at all. It was control. It was about keeping the spotlight squarely on Gwen, even at the expense of their grandfather's memory. I didn't push. I didn't have to. I just gave the truth room to breathe. And Gwen's perfect image? It was starting to crack. The pressure on Gwen was coming from everywhere now. Her husband, silent for so long, finally started questioning the ridiculous memorial costs. June's unwavering support began to crack as more relatives started asking why Gwen's plans looked more like a gala than a tribute. The perfect sister mask was slipping. And Gwen? She lashed out exactly the way I expected. She accused the family of being brainwashed by me, claimed I was running some campaign to turn everyone against her. Some relatives bought it at first, but her tone, her erratic outbursts, they told the real story. Then came the moment that ended it all. One of their grandfather's oldest friends revealed he'd left a letter, his actual memorial wishes. He'd wanted it at the community center where he'd volunteered. No flowers, just donations to charity. Gwen had known about the letter. And ignored it. The explosion was immediate. June demanded an explanation. Family members who'd been defending her felt betrayed. People started questioning where the memorial fund money had really gone. And in that living room, Gwen's perfect image collapsed like a house of cards. Cornered, Gwen turned her full fury on me and Veronica. She accused me of destroying the family, sabotaging the memorial for petty revenge, manipulating everyone. But the spell was broken. They could see it now, the patterns, the control, the way she'd twisted every situation to keep power. Even June couldn't defend her anymore. The memorial was moved to the community center. Gwen's non-refundable country club deposit? Gone. Her last move was pure emotional blackmail. If you choose him over me, she told the family, I'll cut you off. No more holidays. No more family gatherings. I'll disappear. But she'd miscalculated. The months of manipulation had drained everyone's patience dry. Even those who loved her saw the toxicity in her ultimatum. And then, Veronica stood up. For the first time in years, she looked her sister in the eye and called out everything. The guilt trips, the manipulation, the way Gwen had turned their grandfather's memorial into a power play. Years of frustration poured out. It wasn't pretty. But it was necessary. Gwen retreated into victim mode, the misunderstood martyr who'd only ever tried to protect her sister. But no one was buying it anymore. The memorial went ahead as their grandfather had actually wanted. It was simple. Heartfelt. Real. People hugged us. Some even apologized for doubting me in the beginning. Even June came to us later, regret written on her face. She admitted she'd let Gwen's control go unchecked for too long. Gwen attended but kept her distance. Her husband looked like a man finally breathing fresh air. Within weeks, he filed for separation. He moved into a downtown apartment while the divorce paperwork began. The family whispered about it at Sunday dinners. Gwen went silent, blocking most relatives online, skipping every gathering. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding the business she'd tried to sabotage. The catering orders eventually came back. Word spread through the industry about what had really happened. Even a few competitors who'd benefited from the fake reviews reached out with apologies, because they knew what happened to me could happen to them. Veronica was relieved, but also grieving. She'd gained freedom from Gwen's control but lost the sister she'd once trusted. I gave her space to process. Some wounds can't be rushed. Then, 3 months later, Gwen walked into my flagship restaurant. It was during the lunch rush. James spotted her first and quietly alerted me. She was sitting alone at a corner table, perfectly dressed, but with shadows under her eyes that concealer couldn't hide. When she saw me coming, her shoulders tensed, but she didn't leave. I sat down. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside, a check for the exact amount she'd spent on the smear campaign and the country club deposits. Another envelope, printed screenshots of her recent social media posts, all apologies and acknowledgments of her behavior. I pushed them back. Her money wasn't what I wanted. And public apologies? Meaningless if they were just another performance. For the next hour, she talked. About the jealousy she'd felt when she realized her little sister had found someone successful. The fear Veronica would drift away. The panic when her control started slipping. She admitted she'd hired the reputation management company in a blind rage and watched helplessly as it spiraled. Her husband, she confessed, had been documenting her behavior for years. The memorial fiasco was just the last straw. He'd already accepted a job in another state and would be gone by month's end. She'd lost her marriage trying to control her sister's life. I listened but didn't offer comfort. There was no victory in this for me, just a hollow understanding that she'd built her own cage. Before leaving, she asked about Veronica. I kept my answer short. Veronica was healing, building a life free from manipulation. The details? Not hers to know anymore. Then came her last request. She wanted to write Veronica a letter, a real one, she claimed. No manipulation, no agenda. Would I deliver it? I said I'd think about it. A week later, it arrived at my office. I kept it another week before handing it to Veronica, letting her choose. She took it, disappeared into her room, and came out an hour later with red eyes and the letter ripped into neat little squares. She dropped them in the trash, then washed her hands. Some bridges can't be rebuilt with words. Some actions can't be undone. And Gwen was going to have to live with that. 6 months after Gwen's campaign collapsed, my business had not only recovered, it had grown stronger. The attempted sabotage became a quiet legend in the restaurant community. People respected how I'd handled it, calm, professional, and without sinking to her level. I gained partnerships I never would have had otherwise. Veronica thrived too. Free from her sister's constant emotional drain, she poured herself into her work. Her boss noticed and she finally got the promotion she'd once been passed over for, and this time she didn't need anyone's permission. June struggled the most. She had to face her role in letting Gwen's behavior spiral. Therapy helped and slowly she rebuilt trust with Veronica. Family gatherings went on without Gwen. The air was lighter, the planning smoother. Her absence was felt but not missed. One quiet Tuesday over takeout from my own kitchen, I proposed to Veronica. No big spectacle, no audience. She said yes instantly, and made me promise our wedding would be nothing like the elaborate productions Gwen used to dream up. We married 8 months later at the same community center where her grandfather's real memorial had been held. Simple. Honest. Gwen wasn't invited, Veronica didn't even hesitate over that decision. Life settled into something peaceful. My managers stayed vigilant, our security system stronger than ever. We never forgot how close one person's malice had come to undoing years of work. Gwen's check and apology stunt was clever in theory, but it was just paper. Real change couldn't be bought. A year later, a package arrived for Veronica, no return address. Inside, a photo album from childhood, before Marcus, before manipulation. No note. Just a ghost of who Gwen used to be. Veronica looked through it once, then tucked it away. Some memories were worth keeping, even if the person in them was gone. The business kept growing. I started speaking at conferences, teaching other owners how to protect themselves from sabotage, whether it came from competitors or family. 2 years after the memorial, Gwen remarried quietly in another city. The family found out through a cousin's Facebook post. Veronica felt nothing. The sister she'd loved was long gone. We bought a modest home near my flagship restaurant. No one but us had a say in the curtains or the paint color. Gwen's absence made every decision calmer. By the time our 3rd anniversary came, the restaurant where it all began had become a symbol for us. We sat at the same table where Gwen once refused to let me pour wine. James served us with a smile, knowing exactly what that moment meant. That night, Veronica told me she was pregnant. Our daughter was born on a rainy spring night, her eyes like Veronica's, her chin stubborn like mine. June held her with tears in her eyes, promising to be the kind of grandmother she'd never been as a mother. We named her after Veronica's grandmother, not the grandfather whose memory Gwen had tried to weaponize. 5 years later, I owned 15 restaurants. Veronica spoke at women's conferences about surviving manipulation and setting boundaries. Our daughter grew up learning what real family meant, and what it didn't. 10 years after that first dinner, Gwen sent a letter. She was ill. Wanted to reconcile. Veronica read it once, then placed it in the drawer with other artifacts from the past. She chose not to respond. Illness didn't erase the damage done. Our daughter never met her aunt. She grew up with love, boundaries, and freedom from control. She learned early that family is defined by actions, not blood. Today, she runs 3 of our restaurants and is engaged to a good man who respects her independence. She learned from our story without having to live it herself. And that, more than the business growth, more than surviving Gwen's games, is the greatest victory. Folks, if you've stuck with me through this journey, you know it's been one hell of a ride, from humiliation at that dinner table to building a life untouched by Gwen's shadow. If you've ever had your own Gwen, you know the truth, peace is worth any price. So what would you have done in my shoes? If you enjoyed today's drama, just imagine what's waiting in the next one. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go find the next train wreck together. Thanks for watching.